Alright, Revelation chapter 8, verses 6 and 7.
So the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up.
Alright, let's start from the beginning. Remember, we've got the 7 angels, and remember these are the archangels, the 7 angels who stand in the presence of God. And once again, you're probably going to get sick of me saying that over and over and over again, but just in case somebody grabs the recording for this one by itself and they haven't had the context of the other ones, we need to anchor that and describe what we're actually talking about so people don't get confused. In verse 6, these angels prepare to blow their, in my translation that I'm reading from, their mighty blasts. Alright, they're not just blowing a trumpet. This is a pretty big noise they're going to make. Alright, and a powerful noise that they're going to make. Now verse 7. The first angel blew his trumpet, and hail and fire mixed with blood were thrown down on the earth. So you'll notice that what happens when the trumpet is blown is very similar to the 7th plague on Egypt. And we're going to look that up and read it. So Exodus chapter 9, verses 23 to 26.
And Moses stretched out his rod toward heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and fire darted to the ground. And the Lord rained hail on the land of Egypt. So there was hail and fire mingled with the hail, so very heavy that there was none like it in all the land of Egypt, since it became a nation. And the hail struck throughout the whole land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and beast. And the hail struck every herb of the field, and broke every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, there was no hail.
Thank you. So notice there's a dividing line. This is a pretty severe hailstorm. And where the Israelites lived, there was no damage. There was no hail. The Egyptians were affected. The Israelites were not. Now, if you remember, I was saying before that these plagues, the intention of them was to target the gods, or the so-called gods, who the Egyptians had placed their faith in, and to demonstrate how our God is more powerful, more supreme, more everything really than any of these smaller gods. The Egyptians in this time believed there's a god called Nut, who was a sky goddess. There's a god called Set, who was responsible for storms and chaos. And there's a god called Osiris, who is a god of agriculture and fertility.
Who was the first one?
Nut.
What was he the god of?
She was a sky goddess. She was a goddess of the sky.
Oh, the sky, sorry. Mm.
So we've got God basically showing that, they would have been praying to these gods to stop the hail and stop the damage, and none of these gods were powerful enough to do that. Okay, so we have, skipping back to Revelation, we have hail, we have fire, and we have blood. These are very supernatural events. We don't often have our hail coming down with fire or with blood. Right? This is something that's out of the ordinary. It's unusual. Now, some people go, ooh, is the fire actually lightning? Is that what this is talking about? Is there a natural explanation for what's going on here? And is the blood maybe red rain? You know how sometimes you get rain that comes down and leaves dust on everything? And then it's like, well, maybe this is dust from the Sahara that's been blown across and has landed on everything. Okay, so let's look at the words, because this is what we do, right? We dig into the words and we go, oh, is that what it's talking about, or is it something else? So on the question of, is fire referring to lightning? Whenever lightning is mentioned in the New Testament, the word is astrape, which gets translated as lightning or brightness. Now, the word astrape is never translated into the word fire. And that is because if you're referring to the word fire, you use the word phoa, which is exactly the word that John used. These words are not interchangeable, and if you're a Greek speaker or you understand Greek, we would never mix them up. Then it's not like, they're from the same root and could go either way. These are very different words. So no, we're not talking about lightning, we're talking about fire. One of the reasons we also know it's fire is because it burns stuff up. We know lightning can burn stuff up as well, but not on the scale that this is talking. All right, and is blood referring to a colour or a dust? So if John wanted to tell us that the colour was red, he would have used the word puros, which is the Greek word for red. He didn't. He used the word haema, which is where we get hematology from. We get there's a whole heap of blood stuff, right, that gets used with that word. So once again, the words are not interchangeable. If he had have meant the colour, he would have used a word that means colour. If he had have meant blood, he would have used the word that means blood. The next question becomes, should we take this description literally, or is it just meant to be symbolic? Now, we've talked about prophecy needing the whole point of prophecy is to point to real events, because it's almost, I don't really want to say it like this, but it's kind of like God being clever and predicting things, knowing the end from the beginning. The fact that he can predict things with such accuracy shows that he is omnipresent. Right? The prophecy is as much of the proof that he is God as the thing happening, or the thing that does happen at the end, if that makes sense. Alright, so what happens to the hail, the fire and the blood? Did you notice that the hail, fire and blood is actually cast or hurled down onto the earth? So this doesn't come out of your normal clouds. This is being hurled down directly from heaven. So Joel chapter 2, verse 30 to 32 says, I will show wonders in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. From Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there will be deliverance, as the Lord has said, even among the survivors whom the Lord calls. Now that passage of Joel is directly quoted in Acts chapter 2 as well. Alright, so you've got kind of a double quote. But what's interesting to me is there's this reference to earth, blood and fire. Right? The only reference to earth, blood and fire we see is this one in Revelation. And in Joel and in Acts, there's a reference to those who call on the name of the Lord. So salvation is still possible in the midst of these events, which is another reason that we believe they happen in the first half of the tribulation rather than the second half. Because we know from other scriptures that it's going to be it's possible, technically possible for people to repent in the second half, but they won't. Yeah? People aren't going to change their team, change their mind. And once they've taken the mark, that's too late. Okay, so what happens when this interesting hail, fire and blood arrives on the surface of the earth? Well, we're told a third of the earth burned up. A third of the trees burned up. All of the green grass burned up. So not a third of it, like the others, all of it. And did you also notice that we've specified green grass? This is not summer grass, dry grass, cured grass that would be ripe for the burning. Actually, it takes a bit to get green grass going. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to light a fire and fairly intense to get rid of green grass. Right? This is not, once again, if this is the milder, easygoing bits of the judgments, it's pretty extreme.
But then there won't be any animals. There's no grass. They can't feed cows. Cannot feed.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it?
What do they eat?
They might eat leaves on the 2/3 of the trees that are left. They might have to. This is going to be a really we're talking fairly big, catastrophic events happening. Yeah.
It's just localised or worldwide. It all is happening.
Says Earth.
On the earth. So the whole
1/3 of the Earth.
So that's a really good question, because people go around in circles on this one. Are we talking about all the things in a third of the earth? Right, so is there utter devastation across 1/3 of the earth and then 2/3 are left untouched? Or are we talking 1/3 of things over the entire earth? I don't know. My answer to this is it's not really clear. It could be either. It really depends on how this hail and fire and blood is hurled down from heaven. Okay? Because it could, even if it's 1/3 of the things across the entire earth, that is still utter devastation. Imagine, you look at the biggest fires that we know of. We're talking, perhaps in in the room, we're talking Ash Wednesday, we're talking Black Saturday. Even in those, in the areas of utter devastation, it's still only very small in the scale of Victoria, even. It's still only small in some of the towns that were affected.
But it's going to ruin the ecology and everything.
It must. So the regeneration capacity.
To live, doesn't it?
The regeneration capacity of the earth is amazing, right? And God has built that regeneration capacity in, and if you've seen a fire like that, you see the regeneration that happens and the new growth and all those sort of things. But the context of what's going on with the rest of these trumpets, this is not a perfect world to be part of. This is not going to be a fun time. This is not something you're going to want to put your hand up to be part of. And we don't know if we're talking the entire earth. The entire earth has this 1/3 impact, or whether a third of the earth has utter devastation over all of it. Are we wiped? But to do that, you've got to wipe out an entire continent or more. Can you imagine?
One thing's for sure, the climate changes will have reason to be concerned.
We were right.
So they've already seen the polar axis. They're thinking climate change is absolutely a thing now, right? Because we saw the polar axis shift and we saw that the islands all disappeared. And, there's already some big stuff that's happened by the time we get to this point. All right? But the point is, this is going to happen. Now, God says it's going to happen. He's reliable. His prophecies come true. Okay? So the stakes are high.
That's incredible, though. It's hail and fire. I mean, you think that the hail would put the fire out normally.
Well, water would.
Yeah, well.
Maybe that's why it's hail, because it needs a bit of extra.
Both going to be at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah, hail needs
And that,
low
the hail will
temperature,
just,
fire needs high temperature.
the hail will just knock all the leaves off the trees, well, depending on the size.
Well, so, and this is, we're not told the size at this point. There's more hail later on than we are told the size.
Definitely know what it is.
Does it have to be rain? Does it have to be hail as in
Hail of water? Well, my guess is probably, just because, once again, of the words, there would be different words used. We're going to talk about the asteroid in a minute.
Well, you know what hail just did the other couple of weeks ago.
You don't need to be too big to marble-sized hail, and golf ball-sized hail does a heck of a lot of damage, and if you get hit by marble-sized hail, there's a question mark on your own health.
When we were in Ballarat area, we had a hailstorm go through, and they were the size of a tennis ball. And it did a lot of damage.
You don't want to stand under them.
No, we were
straight through roofs.
we're in a car and got hammered with, it was Christmas Day. I don't know if that was a Christmas Day storm, but we had a lot of damage done to our car, and we were in the car, and luckily the windows didn't break. But once again, that's because I was sitting there praying that the windows wouldn't break, and they didn't. Everything that we're talking about is an interpretation. Yeah, even the words we read in English are an interpretation. So we need to be really, really, as much as I would like to, my interpretation, based on what I currently know and the amount that I've done a lot of study on this, so it's funny, I was talking about experts say, and somebody said to me the other day, well, no, you're one. What you've studied on this is well and truly in the territory of expert level. But even then, it's an interpretation. All right, so it can be based on the best interpretations around. It can be based on a whole bunch of knowledge. It can be Holy Spirit communicated, right? But there's still enough of me in the process that it's got potential that it's not 100% perfect. And it doesn't matter who's teaching you, that is the case. So we've had a third of the earth, a third of the trees, and all the green grass gone with the first trumpet judgment. So what's next?